The humiliation. The bass from Marcus's sound system vibrated through the floorboards as Jade pushed through the crowded hallway, searching for her boyfriend among the sea of familiar faces. She was already 30 minutes late thanks to getting stuck at work, and she could feel that familiar knot of anxiety forming in her stomach. Marcus hated when she was late. She found him exactly where she expected, sprawled across his leather sectional in the living room, surrounded by his usual crew. Blake lounged beside him, designer sneakers propped up on the coffee table, while Tyler and Connor occupied the armchairs, red solo cups in hand. The four of them looked like they'd been holding court for hours. "There's my girl," Marcus announced, as soon as he spotted her, but something in his tone made her pause. His words were slightly slurred, and there was a glint in his eyes that she'd learned to recognize as trouble. "Guys, meet Jade, my beautiful, devoted, absolutely psycho girlfriend." The word hit her like a slap. Psycho. He said it with such casual cruelty, like it was an endearing nickname instead of a knife to her chest. Blake immediately erupted in laughter, nearly spilling his drink. "Psycho? Dude, that's harsh," Tyler chuckled, but his grin suggested he was enjoying the show. Jade forced herself to smile, hoping she'd misheard or that this was just Marcus's awful attempt at humor. "Hey, baby. Sorry I'm late. The Henderson project. Ran over and—" "See what I mean?" Marcus cut her off, gesturing wildly at his friends. "She literally has to explain every single minute of her day to me. It's like dating a parole officer, except I'm the one being monitored." The room erupted again. Connor raised his cup in mock salute. "To controlling girlfriends everywhere." "I'm not controlling," Jade said quietly, but her voice was drowned out by their laughter. Blake leaned forward, clearly warming up to the topic. "Oh man, my ex used to do that too, constantly texting, always wanting to know where I was. These girls today are just built different, you know? So insecure." "Right?" Marcus was really getting into his performance now. "Jade here needs me to text her back within like 5 minutes or she has a complete meltdown. God forbid I want to hang out with my boys without getting 20 messages asking when I'll be home." Each word was like another weight added to her chest, making it harder to breathe. This wasn't true. None of this was true. If anything, Marcus was the one who couldn't go an hour without contact, who questioned her every move, who made her feel guilty for having a life outside their relationship. "And don't even get me started on her jealousy," Marcus continued, feeding off his audience's energy. "She literally interrogates me if I so much as mention a female co-worker. It's exhausting being with someone so paranoid." Tyler shook his head in mock sympathy. "Yikes, dude, that sounds toxic as hell." "It really is," Marcus agreed, and the casual way he said it, like their entire relationship was just some burden he had to endure, made something inside Jade's chest crack completely. She stood there, frozen, watching the man she thought she loved systematically destroy her character in front of people whose opinions he valued more than her feelings. Every genuine moment of care she'd shown him, every time she'd supported him through his anxiety attacks and insecurities, was being twisted into evidence of her supposed instability. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that for a moment she couldn't even process it. She'd rushed here from work, worried because he'd seemed stressed in his last few texts, only to find him turning her concern into entertainment for his friends. "I need some air," she managed to whisper, but nobody even looked up as she turned and walked toward the sliding door that led to Marcus's backyard. The cool night air hit her face as she stepped outside, and only then did she realize she was shaking. She pulled out her phone with trembling fingers, initially just needing something to hold on to, something real. That's when she saw it, their text thread, still open from earlier when she'd messaged him about running late. Months of conversations stretched back, and as she began to scroll, a different kind of clarity started to wash over her. Message after message of Marcus's own words stared back at her. His desperation, his jealousy, his need for constant reassurance. Every single thing he'd just accused her of was right there in black and white, written in his own hand. And suddenly, Jade realized that Marcus had just made a terrible mistake. He'd given her the perfect weapon for his own destruction. The evidence Jade found herself sitting on Marcus's back porch steps, the party's chaos muffled behind the glass door. Her phone screen glowed in the darkness as she scrolled through months of text messages, each one revealing a truth that made her stomach churn with a mixture of disgust and vindication. There it was, last Tuesday night at 11:47 p.m. Jade, why aren't you answering? I saw you were online 10 minutes ago. Are you talking to someone else? Followed immediately by, this is so disrespectful. I can't sleep knowing you're ignoring me. She'd been in the shower. For 15 minutes, her thumb moved to another conversation from 3 weeks ago when she'd gone to her cousin's wedding. Who's sitting at your table? Any single guys? Then an hour later, you look really good in that dress. Too good. I don't like how that waiter was looking at you in your story. The waiter had been 60 years old, but the real treasure trove was from last month when she'd worked late on a client presentation. The timestamps told the whole story. 7:23 p.m. When will you be done? 7:45 p.m. Jade, 8:10 p.m. I drove by your office. Your car isn't in the parking lot. 8:15 p.m. Where the hell are you, really? She'd been in the building's back lot because the front was full. When she'd finally called him back at 9 p.m., he'd accused her of cheating and hung up on her. The pattern was everywhere. His jealousy when she'd grabbed coffee with her college friend Rachel. His meltdown when she didn't respond to his good morning text because she was in a meeting. The 43 messages he'd sent during her girls' night out, each one more desperate and accusatory than the last. I know you're probably flirting with guys right now. This silent treatment is cruel. Why are you doing this to me? I love you so much it hurts and you just don't care. Every single behavior he'd just painted as hers was staring back at her in his own words. The obsessiveness, the need for constant contact, the paranoia about her faithfulness, the dramatic reactions to normal boundaries. Jade began taking screenshots, organizing them chronologically. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. Instead, she felt something cold and calculating settling into her chest, a clarity she hadn't experienced in months of walking on eggshells around his insecurities. She found the conversation from 2 weeks ago that perfectly summed up their dynamic. Marcus had written, I hate feeling like I need you so much. It makes me crazy when I don't know what you're thinking every second. And her response, trying to be supportive, you don't need to worry so much, babe. I'm not going anywhere. His reply, but what if you change your mind? What if you realize you can do better? I check your social media constantly because I'm terrified you'll post something that shows you're moving on without me. She had dozens of conversations like this, hundreds of messages where Marcus laid bare his obsession, his need to control, his inability to trust, all while she'd patiently reassured him, sacrificed her own comfort to manage his anxiety, and slowly shrunk herself to accommodate his insecurities. The beautiful irony wasn't lost on her. Marcus had just spent 10 minutes painting her as the unstable one to his friends, and now she had a phone full of evidence proving he was describing himself. As she organized the final screenshots, Jade could hear laughter drifting from inside. They were probably still dissecting her supposed craziness, still enjoying Marcus's performance at her expense. But that was about to change, because Marcus had made one crucial mistake tonight. He'd humiliated the wrong woman. The setup, Jade took a deep breath and smoothed down her hair before sliding the glass door open. The warm air and loud music hit her immediately, but she felt different now, purposeful instead of devastated. She'd spent the last 20 minutes transforming from victim to strategist. Marcus looked up when she walked back in, his face showing just a flicker of surprise that she'd returned so quickly. His friends were exactly where she'd left them, still nursing their drinks and their superiority complex. "Feel better, babe?" Marcus asked, his tone patronizing in a way that made her skin crawl. "Sorry if we were getting a little too real for you," Blake snorted. "Yeah, we were just talking about how lucky Marcus is to have someone so attentive." The word dripped with sarcasm, and Tyler and Connor exchanged amused glances. They thought they'd broken her, sent her outside to cry and compose herself before coming back to accept her place as the crazy girlfriend in their little narrative. "Oh, I feel much better, actually," Jade said, settling into the empty armchair across from them, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I love hearing different perspectives on relationships. It's fascinating how people see things so differently." Her voice was steady, almost cheerful, and she noticed Marcus relax slightly. He probably thought his little performance had successfully put her in her place. "Right?" Connor jumped in. "Like, some girls just don't understand that guys need space. Sometimes they take everything so personally." "Absolutely," Jade agreed, pulling out her phone and pretending to check a message. "Though I've always found it interesting how people tend to project their own issues onto their partners. Like in psychology, they call it projection. When someone accuses others of behaviors they're actually guilty of themselves." The statement hung in the air for a moment. Tyler raised an eyebrow, and she noticed Knox shift uncomfortably in his chair. "What's that supposed to mean?" Marcus asked, but there was something sharper in his voice now. "Oh, nothing specific," Jade said innocently. "Just that sometimes the person calling someone else crazy is actually describing themselves. It's like a defense mechanism." She looked directly at Marcus as she said it, and for just a second she saw uncertainty flicker across his features, but he recovered quickly, forcing out a laugh. "Well, that's certainly one theory," he said, but his casual tone sounded forced now. The conversation continued, but Jade could feel the energy shifting. She wasn't the humiliated girlfriend anymore. She was something else entirely. Something that made Marcus nervous, even though he couldn't quite identify why. Every few minutes, she'd drop another comment, another seed of doubt. When Tyler started complaining about his ex texting him too much, Jade mused, "It's so weird how some people need constant validation from their partners, but then they flip it and act like their partner is the needy one." When Blake mentioned seeing his ex's car at a restaurant, she added, "Imagine being so insecure that you actually follow someone around, but then you convince yourself they're the ones with trust issues." The laughter was becoming less frequent, the jokes falling flatter. Even Connor seemed to be listening more carefully to what she was saying, his expression thoughtful rather than mocking. But Marcus, bless his heart, couldn't leave well enough. Alone, his ego wouldn't let him lose control of the narrative he'd so carefully constructed. "You know what the real problem is?" he announced, clearly trying to regain his audience. "Some people are just addicted to drama. They can't handle a normal, healthy relationship, so they create chaos because that's what they're comfortable with." That's when Jade knew he'd walked right into her trap. She looked around the room at his friends, these guys who thought they knew him so well, and smiled. "You're absolutely right, Marcus," she said sweetly. "Some people really are addicted to drama. Want to see what that actually looks like?" Part 4. The Revelation. The silence that followed was electric. Jade could practically feel the shift in the room's energy as everyone leaned forward slightly, curiosity replacing their previous smugness. Marcus's face went through a fascinating transformation, confusion morphing into the first flickers of panic as he realized something was happening that he couldn't control. "What are you talking about?" he asked, and she could hear the forced casualness in his voice. Jade held up her phone, the screenshot gallery ready and waiting. "Well, since we're all being so honest about relationship dynamics tonight, I thought you guys might want to see some actual evidence of obsessive behavior." "Jade, don't." Marcus started, but she was already turning her phone toward Blake, who was sitting closest to her. "This is from last Tuesday," she said conversationally. "Marcus sent me 47 messages in 3 hours because I didn't respond to his goodnight text fast enough." Blake's eyes widened as he read the screen. She swiped to the next screenshot. "And this is from when I had dinner with my college friend Rachel." Notice the timestamps. He was messaging me every 6 minutes asking who else was there and when I'd be home. She could see the exact moment Blake's expression changed from amusement to concern. Without a word, he passed the phone to Tyler, who began scrolling through the messages with growing disbelief. "Dude," Tyler said slowly, looking up at Marcus, "this says you drove by her office to check if she was really working late?" Marcus's face had gone completely red. "Those are taken out of context. Jade, you can't just—" "Context?" Jade laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Connor, want to see the context? Here's a 40-message thread from when I went to my cousin's wedding. Marcus convinced himself I was flirting with strangers because I didn't answer his texts during the ceremony." Connor took the phone, and his expression grew more troubled with each swipe. "Jesus, man, you told her the waiter was looking at her. Inappropriately, he looks like somebody's grandfather. And here's my personal favorite," Jade continued, taking her phone back and finding the conversation from 2 weeks ago. She read aloud, "I check your social media constantly because I'm terrified you'll post something that shows you're moving on without me." The room had gone completely quiet, except for the distant party music. Blake, Tyler, and Connor were all staring at Marcus now, and none of them looked amused anymore. "Those are private conversations," Marcus said desperately. "She's violating my privacy." "Privacy?" Jade's voice rose slightly. "You just spent 20 minutes telling these guys I was a psycho-stalker, and you're worried about privacy? Every single thing you accused me of tonight, the clinginess, the need for constant contact, the paranoia, it's all right here in your own words." She held up her phone again. "Should I read the one where you admitted to creating fake social media accounts to monitor my activity? Or the one where you said you loved me so much it made you feel crazy?" Marcus looked around the room desperately, seeking support from his friends, but their expressions had shifted completely. Where there had been camaraderie and shared jokes about crazy girlfriends, there was now uncomfortable silence and questioning looks. "Look, maybe I get a little anxious sometimes," Marcus said, his voice cracking slightly. "But that doesn't mean—" "A little anxious?" Jade interrupted. "Marcus, you once called me 17 times in a row because I didn't answer while I was getting my hair cut. I have the call log." Tyler was shaking his head slowly. "Dude, this is actually concerning." "Right?" Jade said. "Imagine being in a relationship where you're constantly walking on eggshells, managing someone else's insecurities, only to find out they're telling everyone you're the unstable one." The betrayal in her voice was real now, cutting through her. Calculated calm. "I've spent months making myself smaller, changing my behavior, canceling plans with friends because I was so afraid of triggering another one of your meltdowns. And this is how you repay me." Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, and written in his own desperate messages. Part 5. The aftermath. Jade stood up, smoothing down her dress with hands that were perfectly steady now. The 4 men in front of her looked like they'd witnessed a car accident, shocked, uncomfortable, and unable to look away. "Well," she said, slipping her phone back into her purse, "I think that cleared up any confusion about who the real problem is in this relationship." Marcus finally found his voice, but it came out as a desperate whisper. "Jade, please, can we talk about this privately?" She looked at him for a long moment. This man who had systematically chipped away at her self-worth for months while projecting his own toxic behaviors onto her. The man who had just humiliated her in front of his friends for entertainment. "No, Marcus, we can't, because there's nothing left to talk about." She turned to address his friends, who were still sitting in stunned silence. Blake, Tyler, Connor. Now, it's been educational meeting you all. Maybe next time someone tells you their girlfriend is crazy, you might want to ask yourself why they need to convince you so hard. Blake cleared his throat awkwardly. Jade, we didn't know. Of course you didn't, she said, not unkindly. Because you only heard his version, and his version was designed to make him look like the victim instead of the person who needed therapy for his control issues. She grabbed her jacket from the back of the chair and headed toward the door. Behind her, she could hear Marcus scrambling to his feet. Jade, wait! Don't do this. We can work through this. She paused at the doorway and turned back one last time. Work through what, Marcus? Your pathological need to control me, or your habit of gaslighting me into thinking I'm the problem? The party continued around them, but their little corner of the living room felt like a bubble of uncomfortable truth. Connor was staring into his drink. Tyler was scrolling through his own phone, probably reviewing his own relationship patterns. Blake just looked embarrassed. You know what's funny? Jade said, her hand on the door handle. I actually came here tonight worried about you. You seemed stressed in your last few texts, and I thought maybe you needed support. Instead, I found out you were using me as a punchline. She pulled the door open, and the cool night air rushed in. But thank you, Marcus. You've taught me something valuable tonight. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. As she walked to her car, Jade could hear raised voices starting behind her. Connor asking Marcus what the hell was wrong with him, Blake saying he felt like an asshole, Tyler demanding to know if any of the stories Marcus had told them about. Previous girlfriends were actually true, but she didn't look back. For the first time in months she felt light, free, like she could breathe again. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Jade, please come back, I can explain everything. She deleted it without responding and blocked his number. Then she called her best friend Rachel, the same Rachel that Marcus had been so paranoid about her seeing. Hey girl, Rachel answered on the second ring. How was Marcus's party? Well, Jade said, starting her car and pulling away from the house where she could still see arguing figures silhouetted in the windows. Let's just say it was exactly what I needed. Want to grab some late-night ice cream? I have a story to tell you. As she drove away, Jade realized that Marcus had been right about one thing. She really was different from how he'd portrayed her. She was stronger, smarter, and finally, completely done with being anyone's victim. The best revenge, it turned out, wasn't elaborate or cruel. It was simply the truth, delivered at exactly the right moment to exactly the right people. And sometimes that was more than enough.